It's 1:22 in the morning, Thursday morning. I'm sitting here, can't sleep. Just totally mind is racing, back and forth, and I just totally heartbroken for the story out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've visited Minneapolis many times. I got family out there, and they're some of the greatest people that you'll ever meet. The Minnesota goodbye, which takes about 2.5 hours to get out of somewhere because everybody's saying goodbye and everybody's having a great time, and they're just great people that love their community and love their kids and love their city and love their state. And it's just so sad to see what has come out of there and what has transpired on Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning, the kids at Annunciation Catholic School, grades pre-K through the 8th grade, were in church. Monday, they returned to school with a banner outside the school, an electronic banner, I believe, that said, "A future filled with hope." And then 2 days later, yesterday morning, they're sitting there in church, the first mass of the school year, and all of a sudden, bullets hail through the stained glass windows, and the suspect was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun. He put 2 4x4s into the exits of the church, and then he started shooting through the windows at the children who were in their pews praying. Absolutely heartbreaking. 2 children, ages 8 and 10, have passed away, and 14 children and 3 adults were hurt in the shooting. It's just unimaginable to think that here we are again in another school shooting. It's just heartbreaking and just tragic that this continues to happen in this great country of ours. Kids sent off to school and then they never come back. It's just heartbreaking. One of the kids described it as, you had the teachers jumping on students and covering students, and you had the older students jumping on the younger students, and it just sounded like everybody was trying to just stay safe and help one another out and try to comfort one another throughout this tragic event that unfolded. The suspect eventually killed himself, and here's one of the kids describing what happened.
It was like shots fired, and then we kind of got under the pews. It kind of they shot through the stained glass windows, I think, and it was really scary.
That kid was a 5th grade kid, saying how they dove under the pews, and it was really scary. No kid anywhere, regardless if it's the United States of America or any other country in this world, should have to worry about this when they're in school. School should be a safe place. They weren't even in school, though. They were in a church praying. And this sick, demented kid that did this, he had hate-filled videos on social media. He wrote a book in Cyrillic, which is Eastern European writing. He also wrote another in English. He was filled with hate, this kid was. He hated everybody, but he especially hated himself. One of the things that these commenters keep saying and keep talking about is find a motive. We need to find a motive. And one of the commentators says, trying to attach rational thinking to an irrational act. They're never going to find the motive, but this kid truly had hate filled inside of him. He was hate filled, and he hated everybody, even himself. He had a fascination and was immersed with school shooters, and it's just absolutely sickening that here we are again, the start of the school year, and this is happening. The poor kids, pre-K through 8th, they're in church, praying in the pews, stained glass window breaks. They claimed 50 to 100 bullets just whizzing and flying through the air, and 2 kids dead, 8 and 10. 14 hurt, 3 adults as well. But all these kids in that church are never going to be the same. Something that they're going to live with forever. Those lives have changed. Those parents that had to get that call, or they had to get the news that their kid wasn't coming home. Just imagine how happy they were to send their kids off to school. They've probably saved up a little extra money. Catholic schools can be pretty expensive. And sent them off thinking they were going to be okay. And they're not returning home tonight. Just absolutely sad. Absolutely sickening. And the young kid who was the 5th grader also talked about his friend. And listen to what he has to say here, which is heartbreaking as well.
I was like 2 seats away from the stained glass windows. So they were the shots were right next to me.
That's scary.
Yeah.
You went under the pew after that happened?
Yeah. And
Is that what everyone tried to do?
I think I got gunpowder on my neck.
When you heard the shots, what went through your head?
I was the first one I was what is that? I thought it was just something. Then when I heard it again, I just ran under the pew. And then I covered my head. My friend Victor saved me though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit. My friend got hit in the back.
Did he go to the hospital?
Yeah, he went to the hospital.
This kid describing how his friend Victor hopped on top of him and got shot in the back. Such heroic actions by young Victor. A hero at such a young age. And these kids should not have to be going through this. School should be a place of learning, not a war zone. And this just constantly just keeps happening and happening. Since 1999, there has been over 390 school shootings with 415 students and educators killed and 907 wounded. Again, over 390 school shootings with 415 students and educators killed and 907 wounded. Wounded. Come on, we can be better. We have to be better. This is the future of America, these young kids that are going off to school, the future of this country, and they have to deal with this. They have to deal with this maniac shooting through the stained glass window and shooting at these kids, and it's just absolutely friggin' terrible. Since 2020, the leading cause of death for children and adolescents ages 1 through 19 in the U.S. are gun shootings. That's just crazy. Again, this kid does all this, and they haven't said if he's from the community or not. But my guess would be very well that he is, and he did graduate from the shooter did graduate from Annunciation School in 2017. His mother had worked there, and she retired a few years back. So this kid had been, previously went to that school. He sat in the same exact pews, prayed, and went and did this in his own neighborhood, in his own backyard. For what? Because he wanted to be famous? Because he had a fascination with school shooters? The hottest thing that I was listening to is Mary Ellen O'Toole. She's a former FBI special agent. What she said was, there are others right now that are deciding how they're going to do theirs better. And she said, the power of the copycat effect. She was talking about school shootings. Let me say that again, school shooters. There are others right now that are deciding how they are going to do theirs better. The power of the copycat effect. Mary Ellen O'Toole, FBI special agent. And just think about that. The sick people out there right now that are thinking how they're going to go out and do it better. and it's just sickening to think. You know, this is a call to action. You know, this just isn't a debate for action just in Minneapolis, but across every city, across every county, and across every state in this country. We need to have a debate. We need to come to a conclusion. We need to figure this out and stop this in its tracks. You know, the principal spoke about this and spoke about what transpired today, and you know, with heavy hearts, all obviously he lost 2 students, and listen to what he has to say.
Any of our students and families and staff watching right now, I love you. You're so brave, and I'm so sorry this happened to us today. Within seconds of this situation beginning, our teachers were heroes. Children were ducked down. Adults were protecting children. Older children were protecting younger children. And as we heard earlier, it could have been significantly worse without their heroic action. This is a nightmare, but we call our staff the Dream Team. And we will recover from this. We will rebuild from this.
We will recover from this. We will rebuild from this. Just absolutely stoic there, the principal of Annunciation Catholic School. His name is Matt DeBoer, and he also said that we lost 2 angels today. Again, just so heartbreaking for that whole community. The Annunciation family, the Catholic school, you know. Then you had some politicians out there, the mayor, police chief, the governor. We're going to get into Governor Walz real quick, and let's hear what he had to say.
On the country who are watching, keep us in your thoughts and prayers, but also keep us in the thoughts for action. Keep us in the ideas that we can work together. And it's on these days like this, I think, and I hope we can hold on to it. We are unified as a community. Everybody across the country today is part of the Annunciation Parish, and they're with those families.
You know, he points out everyone is part of the Annunciation family across the United States. Thoughts and prayers are he's asking for. And, you know, no doubt people that are spiritual and that are holy and that are religious are going to be praying for those kids and the families and the teachers and the first responders and everybody in that community, you know. But you heard Tim Walz, the governor, say, asking for thoughts and prayers, and listen to what the mayor had to say. He was pretty poignant. So listen to what the mayor had to say.
These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
You know, he was pretty upset there. That was Mayor Jacob Frey. And you can't blame him, you know, saying prayers. They were praying. And, you know, it should be the basic assurance that for parents and kids that they are safe at school, that they are safe in places of worship, you know. But in America today, you know, they're not. And we got to do some things to change that. You know, the Pope even had a few words to say. The Pope said, while commending the souls of the deceased children to the love of Almighty God, His Holiness prays for the wounded as well as the first responders, medical personnel, and clergy who are caring for them and their loved ones. At this extremely difficult time, the Holy Father imparts to the Annunciation Catholic School community, the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis, and the people of the greater Twin Cities metropolitan area his apostolic blessing as a pledge of peace, fortitude, and consolation in the Lord Jesus. That's from the Pope. So a lot of people are weighing in on this, a lot of people praying, but we need to come up with some solutions and stop this. There should not be one more. After Sandy Hook, when they killed all the little kids, I thought it was going to be over, but no, here we are. Columbine, 1999, and then, here we are still, 2025, Annunciation. It's just heartbreaking and sad. I was on the FBI website, and we're going to read a little bit here, but it says that studies have also proven that before mass attacks, someone observed concerning behaviors that were signs the person was on a path to violence. The people who noticed were often friends, family, schoolmates, co-workers, or loved ones. You may be in a unique position to observe these signs in someone you know. Educating yourself on what to look for can be the key to preventing an attack of mass violence in your community. This was a statement by a close friend of an active shooter. When you know something is wrong but you don't want to say it, talk to someone about it. Report it, even if they're your friends, brother, family. Don't let that hold you back from doing the right thing. And the FBI says what to know. No single behavior means someone will commit violence, but research has identified behaviors that may indicate a person is moving towards violence. The earlier a person's concerning behaviors are noticed, the more options are available to get the person help. Together with other concerning behaviors, new or inappropriate interest in weapons may increase concern for violence against others. And here are some common concerning behaviors. Comments, jokes, or threats about violent plans. Repeated or detailed fantasies about violence. Comments about hurting themselves or others. Creating a document, video, suicide note, or other item to explain or claim credit for future violence. Seeing violence as the way to solve their problems. Unusual difficulty coping with stress. Reduced interest in hobbies and other activities. Worsening performance at school or work. Increasing isolation from family, friends, or others. Angry outbursts or physical aggression. Increasingly troublesome interactions with others. Obsessive interest in prior attackers or attacks. Bizarre or unexpected change in appearance, including dress or hygiene. Asking questions about or testing security at a possible target. And changing vocabulary, style of speech, or how they act in a way that reflects a hardened point of view or a new sense of purpose associated with violent extremist causes, particularly after a catalyzing event. And then what to do. Talk to someone you trust. But be the key to preventing violence by talking to someone you trust. This could be a school administrator, employee assistance, peer, coach, religious leader, or someone else you respect. And then contact law enforcement, your local law enforcement or a local FBI field office, or reporting it to tips.fbi.gov. Again, you can report it at tips.fbi.gov. Stopping school shootings in America is a deeply complex challenge with no single solution. But I believe there are proven strategies that, when combined, can reduce the risk. For me, 1, limit access to guns for at-risk individuals. That's red flag laws. It allows courts to remove guns temporarily from people showing signs of violence or suicidal behavior. Universal background checks, close loopholes in private and gun show sales, and also safe storage laws. Require guns to be locked away, especially from children. Most school shooters access guns from home or from people they know. 2, strengthen mental health support in schools. Increase funding for school counselors, psychologists, and social workers. Train staff to recognize early warning signs of mental health crises. Create confidential systems for students to seek help without fear of punishment. Most people with mental illness are not violent. Mental health support is about preventing crisis, not stigmatizing. 3, intervene early with threat assessment programs. Form multidisciplinary threat assessment teams in schools, law enforcement counselors, and administrators. Encourage students to report concerning behavior with anonymous reporting tools. And act on red flags before a student escalates to violence. Effective threat assessment is proactive, not punitive. It's about de-escalation and support. 4. Create a culture of belonging and inclusion. Combat bullying, isolation, and hate through education and positive school climate policies. Support marginalized or at-risk students with mentorship and inclusion programs. And then empower students with restorative justice and peer-led initiatives. Many school shooters feel alienated or rejected. Connection can be a powerful deterrent. Improve physical security without creating prisons. Secure school entrances, require ID badges, monitor access points. Use security technologies wisely, not just metal detectors, but also communication tools for emergencies. Avoid over-policing schools, which can harm students of color and those with disabilities. Focus on smart, safety, and community trust, not fear. 6. Policy reform and political will. Pass evidence-based gun control measures supported by a majority of Americans. Fund research into gun violence prevention, including at the CDC and NIH. Push for bipartisan solutions at state and federal levels. Real change is going to require lawmakers to listen to families, students, and experts, not just lobbyists. Empower communities, not just schools. Involve parents, healthcare providers, and local organizations in prevention. Address broader issues like poverty, domestic violence, and systemic inequality that contribute to violence. And promote trauma-informed care and violence interruption programs. Violence is a community issue, so is safety. There's no silver bullet, but we know what works. Prevention, connection, responsible gun policy, and community engagement. The real question is, do we have the will to act? You know, Kash Patel came out and said the FBI is investigating this as the shooting as domestic terrorism and hate crime. No doubt about it. Domestic terrorism, hate crime, both. But, you know, the shooter is not going to be brought to justice. And, you know, unless real change is implemented where we can learn from this and we can honor the victims, the 8 and 10-year-old, instead of making this political and making this, turning this into a back and forth, we need to get together and get real solutions. You know, the ones that I brought up are great. You know, nobody's trying to take anybody's guns, but there needs to be some checks and balances when it comes to, you know, the president responded on Truth Social today. I've been fully briefed on the tragic shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The FBI quickly responded and they are on the scene. The White House will continue to monitor this terrible situation. Please join me in praying for everyone involved. And then he had a proclamation where, as a mark of respect for the victims of the senseless acts of violence perpetrated on August 27, 2025 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, by the authority vested in me as President of the United States by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby order that the flag of the United States shall be flown at half-staff at the White House and upon all public buildings and grounds, at all military posts and naval stations, and on all naval vessels of the federal government in the District of Columbia and throughout the United States and its territories, and possessions until sunset, August 31st, 2025. I also direct that the flag shall be flown at half-staff for the same length of time at all United States embassies, legations, offices, and other facilities abroad, including all military facilities. And lastly, you know, I'd like to talk about when stuff like this happens, that we need to remember the victims. It's about the victims. It's not about the person that did it, because this one, in this instance, is just wanted to be famous and just had a fascination with past people that had done the same acts that he did. So let's focus on the victims. Let's focus on the families. Let's focus on the community of Annunciation Catholic School. Let's send our thoughts. Let's send our prayers. Let's send some cards. You know, let's try our best to come together, not just as a community in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but come together as a country and let's wrap our arms around these kids and let's start trending in the right direction and start doing things to make sure that all kids are safe when going to school, that all people are safe when they're at church or at the mosque or at temple. You know, let's try to come together, you know. And as I said, you know, some of the top things we have to do is limit access to guns for at-risk individuals, strengthen mental health support in schools, intervene early with threat assessment programs, create a culture of belonging and inclusion, improve physical security without creating prisons, policy reform and political will, empower communities, not just schools. So if we go off those 7 and start today, this morning, and let's look forward to making some real change in this country for the future of our country, for future generations. Let's do the right thing. There should not be another kid killed in school, killed in church. There should not be another kid killed in the streets of America. It's just, you know, school shootings are not just headlines. They're the loss of the future, families, and peace of mind. As we've discussed today, the issue is complex, emotional, and urgent, but awareness is only the first step. It's up to all of us, parents, students, educators, lawmakers, and community members, to keep asking the hard questions, to push for meaningful change, and to never accept that this is just the way things have to be. Thank you for joining me this morning. Let's keep the conversation going, not just in our communities, but in our actions, because every student deserves to feel safe. Not someday, but now. Until next time, stay informed, stay compassionate, and stay active. Peace and love, peace and love.